So hello everyone. I hope you all are doing great. I would like to welcome you all to today's panel discussion on balancing the business with the human touch during layoffs. On behalf of Agile People Ops, me, Mariana Di Rosario, your host, would like to thank you all for taking out your precious time and joining us for our very first panel event for the year 2023. We have an amazing panel experts with us today. So I would like, with no further delay, to introduce you to our panelists. The first panelist is Mr. Bernard Spee. He is a people consultant and adult educator. He expertises in organization and people development, agile ways of working, and change management. The second panelist is Mr. Cliff Berg. He is the co-founder and managing partner at Agile 2 Academy, executive level Agile, and DevOps advisor, author of Agile 2, the next iteration of Agile. The third panelist is Mr. David Mui. He is a regional lead at InfoWorks Asia Limited and is an APF certified people ops coach. The fourth panelist is Ms. Lakshmi Chiravari. She is the co-founder, L&D advisor, APF accredited trainer at Culture Elegance, author of ebook, Humanize the Hiring Experience. I would also like to introduce you all to Nadia, who is the moderator for today's session. Ms. Nadia Bernard is a partner program manager at Agile People Ops and APF certified People Ops coach. She is also the L&D manager at Rand Capital. So a very warm welcome to all the panelists, moderator, and whoever has joined as the audience. So over to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Mariana. So welcome everybody to our live discussion. So just to ease into it, we live in a world where layoffs is a reality for many employees, and even maybe many of us on the line today. The possibility of a looming layoff can cause employees to experience layoff anxiety. This can also impact their motivation and impact their motivation and influence their lack of focus. And eventually this can become a self-fulfilling prophecy where they didn't get laid off. Statistics have shown that in America alone, in 2022, over 15 million people were laid off, and over 48% of people that current employees in America experience layoff anxiety. So it's something that's a very pressing matter for all of us. And this brings us to today's LinkedIn Live event, where we're going to discuss the balancing the business with a human touch during layoffs. So I'm going to kick it off. David, if it's okay, if I can ask the first question to you.
Sure.
Okay, so I would like to know, do you think there's a more gentle and flexible way or alternatives to layoffs, such as reducing hours and pay?
I think there are a lot of alternatives to lay off, but depending on the context. If I'm not wrong, regarding the recent global layoff or mass layoff activities, because a lot of organizations, particularly large organizations, they got a very short time frame to execute an agile way to address the business. So possibly, I don't blame layoff is a bad thing, and but if the time frame doesn't allow the organization to go through a long process, possibly layoff is a choice.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't know if anybody else would like to add their opinion to that. Anybody else on the panel? Maybe Cliff?
Yeah, people are affected by layoffs differently. I myself have been laid off 3 times in my career, and 2 of them were among the happiest days of my life. But a layoff can also be very traumatic. In the IT field, people are accustomed to having a lot of job flexibility. The turnover is pretty high. A lot of people work as contractors. There's a lot of opportunity. So layoff is not quite as scary as it is in some other professions, but still, even so, it can be very disruptive. It can take even if you do have opportunities, it can take many months to transition.
Yes.
And, you know, having to pay a mortgage or something, and if you have people depending on you, it can be very difficult. You know, I think, you know, we need to look at the cost that organizations experience when they lay people off. They save money, but they also incur cost. You know, eventually, if they grow and have to hire people to, you know, hire some of those people back even, there's a cost of onboarding people, or, you know, getting people productive the way those people were. When people work for you, you have an investment in them. There was a learning curve that they experienced. They've created networks also. When you lay someone off, you lose that. So if there's strategies for maybe having people go part-time, or you know, maybe shifting priorities so that you know, some of your you know, costs, you know, some of your direct costs are less, so that you can keep the people on. People are a very powerful, flexible asset, and laying them off really should be a last resort, I think.
Thank you, Cliff. I'd like to ask you, Bernard. So what kind of climate do we want to create during layoff? Is it a climate where we treat the employee as an enemy, escorting them out of the building? Or do you think that this organization should offboard people in a more supportive way? What do you think, Bernard?
Well, I guess in a Singapore context, right, we see layoffs as the last resort. And I'm happy to hear that there are a lot of alternatives available, and Cliff has mentioned some of them. In the local context, we do have a scheme called the Job Redesign Scheme, wherein we have opportunities to reskill our workers at large. And we also have a mid-career convergence program, wherein we are able to transit affected employees to other careers of their interests, of their skill sets that they have currently. But let's all bear in mind that layoffs is also an employee experience.
That's true. That's true. And I think we forget about it, that it's, you know, we usually just see it from the business point of view, not from the employee point of view. Lakshmi, I would like to also pick your brain on this.
So layoffs, right? My perspective is that layoffs could be inevitable. Like if it comes to business, business has no other goal. But to what extent is the business or the company going ahead and doing this layoffs, and in what way are they doing, right? Are we sacrificing the human aspect, right? Like as Cliff, Bernard, David rightly pointed out, you know, at the end of the day, they are people, they are humans, emotions are there. How are you even going ahead and doing the layoffs, right? What is the reason behind the layoffs? Companies just can't go ahead and send some cold emails, or, you know, shut down the access to their systems and all. I have been a part of that. Just as Cliff was a part of the layoff, I have been laid off, okay? And I have learned a lot from that, you know, professionally and personally. So, you know, companies should be more gentle enough, in a very human way, conduct the layoffs, because they should not forget that tomorrow, if the same position opens up because the business is doing good or because of some other reason, maybe the people who were there as assets at some point in time, right? Or they have given their best, you know, of their career life to the organization, if they are welcomed back, right? Then those people should not have any hesitation, because the laying off was done in a very, you know, professional way, in a very human way. We can still be connected with them, and they should be more than happy maybe to join the you know, company, right? So in a nutshell, if I have to say, it's like, you know, just going in the flow certain times might not be good, especially, you know, when we are talking from the layoff point of view. A 360-degree thought process should go. And when I say 360-degree thought process, it's about, from the business angle, from the humans angle, that is employees angle, and all of that has to be, thought through. So, yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Lakshmi. So, Cliff, I'd like to ask you, who do you think should steer this human touch during the layoffs? Would it be the C-suite? Would it be the leaders, the managers, the people operation practitioners, or is it a combination of all of them?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I'd like to say something about the previous topic.
Oh yeah, please go ahead. Thanks, Cliff.
One of the 2 times I was laid off was like what was just described, where like things are suddenly turned off and you're escorted out. It was not quite so bad because the boss actually did talk to me and was very considerate and nice, but then I was escorted out. And I would never, ever, ever, ever go to work again for a company that did that in that way. I would never go back. In contrast, the first time I was ever laid off, the CTO talked to me and explained why. The company was being acquired and they had to position themselves financially. And he was apologetic, but he was just very factual and explained the situation. And what can you do? In fact, it was what it was, and they had to do it. But they didn't turn off any access. Not only that, but I was allowed to come and go for the following month to using all the facilities to try and find another job. So, I think companies are fearful, oh, people are going to do this and they're going to do that. They won't if you treat them like human beings. It's like in order to protect themselves against the one case that tries to like maybe take the house down, they mistreat everybody in that process. And I think a better approach is to take precautions so that it can sometimes be an employee, not someone who's being laid off, but someone who's still there who sabotages things.
Yes.
You need to have protections. Things need to be backed up. Security needs to use the concept of compartmentalization. Not everybody should have access to everything. As an organization should be resilient so that one person can't take it down just because their accounts are still on. So I think this whole idea of turning off their access and then escorting them out, I think is just really inhuman behavior. It's really abusive. With regard to your question about who should be involved in the decision and in the process, I think, the people who should be involved should be people who've had the primary relationship with that individual. The individual probably has a relationship with HR in some way. And if they don't, they should. The individual probably has a relationship with one or more managers. And all those people should play a role. It's not something you should just hand off to someone. Okay, well, it's your job to lay them off. All those people should be involved. And because it's a big deal for the individual. So, when making a decision like that, it should account for not just the financial aspect, but also like how will it affect the projects, how will it affect the knowledge space of the organization and what's positioned to be able to do, what does losing that person actually do to us over the next few years? People have skills, they have networks in an organization, others depend on them, so what's a holistic kind of viewpoint? And I don't think it's like a checkbox thing. I think it's it's if you're only putting the amount of attention to it like 1 hour, how much attention and effort goes into hiring someone? And if you compare that with the attention and effort in unhiring them, it should be comparable.
Yes. I think just to add to what you said before, you probably, you described two different situations on how you were laid off. And I'm sure if the second one offered you a job, or, if there was a situation where you got to work with either one, be it a consultant or whatever, the way that the second one treated you would probably impact who you choose.
It absolutely did. And if they had come back 6 months later and said, please join us, I would have jumped at it. I would have
Yes.
always, and it was about the individuals, the CTO was a human being and
Yeah.
acted like a human being. I mean, he made hard decisions, but he didn't do it callously. And, I felt there was an integrity about it, and a transparency and an honesty and an empathy. And I would have gone back there. And so I would have never spoken bad of them, or I would have encouraged other people to join them.
Yes.
I've never forgotten that. In fact, I stayed in touch with him. Years later, I formed my own company and I invited him. We discussed about him coming on board with my company. That didn't pan out, but
the relationship was still
the relationship was very much still there. Whereas in the other situations, in fact, one of them, I'm not going to go into it, but it actually it was quite bitter because of the way they did it. I think it was really even unethical. And again, it was done because of an acquisition.
Yes.
It ended up being acquired by Accenture, and they were getting rid of the most highly paid. I was senior, I was highly paid according to them. Of course, my pay compared to like some of the executives, because I was not an executive, I was a subject matter expert. My pay compared to executives probably was several orders of magnitude different.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Okay. David, I don't know if you want to add to Cliff's response on whose responsibility it is to steer the human touch during these layoffs.
Yeah. In the past, I used to be the HR regional director. I did that layoff process many times. So the possibility is I come from my personal experience. First of all, I would like to reiterate that a lot of people misunderstood layoff and assume that this is the last thing to do. I don't agree. I don't disagree. I think it's a choice. Every organization have a context. We need to look at the context. What is the best way to do at that moment? Sometimes, based on what we discussed, I think most of the people will agree that it's not so much the problem of layoff. It's how do we treat the people doing the process? We can do a very lousy job if we keep the people and giving them some alternatives, but treat them badly.
Yes.
The focus is more about how to handle the respect, how to treat people as a human being.
Yes.
And going back to your question is who should be involved? I think layoff is a business decision. To me, it's everyone in organization has a role to play, and they should carefully plan and carefully execute, because different people will have different roles to play. Like the senior leader, they have to share with the people what will be the near term, what will be the strategy, what are the future purpose, and provide the clarity. But at the same time, I think a number of panels also mentioned about the relationship, the direct manager. How are they going to communicate? How are they going to handle the situation? Are they treating their people respectfully, or they just ask them to go to the HR organization? I think that would be bad, isn't it? But of course, not as bad as just give them an email, tell them you lose your job. I think that would be very extreme case. And also, we have a lot of details. How are we going to handle those people? They are not asked to go. They remain.
Yeah, exactly.
They behind. And how are the work we design will happen and the details. So everyone in the organization, I think, has a role to play in the process.
Yeah, thanks, David. So, Lakshmi, I would like to ask you the last question. So, people operations create policies and playbooks for everything from leave policies to how do we implement culture to diversity, equity, inclusion. Should we have a playbook for layoffs with the do's and don'ts? And would the C-suite and leaders buy into that, which I think is probably the bigger question, or the bigger, like, you know, we can create all of these things, but would people actually buy into it?
Okay, great question. First and foremost, yes, there are so many playbooks out there. I mean, anything and everything, you just name it. But professionally, I have not come across layoffs or anything related to, let's not even say it as layoff. Let's first say it as offboarding process, right? I mean, people still call it as exit interviews. I mean, the term exit itself, you know, it doesn't have a very good tone attached to that. So even if we're thinking about an offboarding process, how are you doing that? And our leaders, C-suite, everybody, you know, are well prepared. You know, business dynamics does happen. And as, you know, other panel members did talk about the context, right? And 2022 and 2023 starting, there has been so much out there, so many layoffs have been happening. So what are companies learning from this external environment or whatever is being created out by other leaders and other companies? Are they even taking that next step that in my company, if at any point in time such a thing occurs, how do we really go about in managing that situation? Should we at least go ahead and create a check-in or list like do's and don'ts, right? So that kind of discussion can definitely happen. And in fact, it should happen, because everywhere companies, you know, on one end, companies are talking about employee experience, human experience, and all that. On the other hand, there are these layoffs that's happening, right? And there's so much trending on LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn has become yet another Twitter or something where everything and anything goes out there, right? So what can companies do, you know? At least if, again, my perspective would be that, yes, there should be something out there wherein the leaders, the C-suite, and the people ops practitioners, you know, they have to put in some thoughts on this and plan it out. And at least have that hard conversation that if anything of this happens, how are we going ahead and paying respect or bringing in that human experience even during the layoffs?
Yeah.
So being prepared for it if required, fair enough, you know. So I would say that yes, it should be important. And related to your second part of the question, like C-suite and leaders buy-in is required. It has to be, you know, it has to be there. The buy-in should be there, because at the end of the day, it's all about people experience. So no matter what, that buy-in should be there. Leaders and C-suite should own it. And as everybody else have talked about, you know, explaining the rationale, understanding the context, everybody plays a role. So all of that stays, you know, out there. So the buy-in has to be there. And maybe the courage should be there, you know, to take it forward or to do it in the right way, in a very human way, I would say. And if I talk about people ops practitioners, the courage is missing at this point in time. And nobody's to be blamed, but then it's like on we as, you know, practitioners and leaders, how are we taking it?
Yeah. Thank you, Lakshmi. Bernard, I don't know if you want to add something to that or.
Yeah, sure. I guess in a local context, we have such guidelines that we deal with assess manpower. But what I really learned from it is that we have to collaborate on this. If necessary, have teams of teams. Collaborate together, deliver it. But let's not forget to reflect and learn from that experience, because we have to be iterative on this. Layoffs could take a while, and there are a lot of opportunities for us to learn from it and to better deliver it in iterations.
Thank you. I like that. So we have a question from the audience. They want to know, do you use a good measure or questionnaire to revise the impact of layoffs on people impacted? So I don't know. Cliff, do you want to give us your 2 cents on that? So do you use a good measure or questionnaire to revise the impact of layoffs on people impacted?
Well, I haven't. You know, it's been a while since a company of mine laid people off. In fact, it was back in the early 2000s when I had a company about 200 people, and we laid some people off because the tech bubble had burst.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been a really good idea. We didn't think of it. You know, we gathered the people affected into a room because everybody worked in the office back then, and explained things to them, and that everyone received an exit package. So we really tried to do it in a human way. But I think that following up with people like that to try and learn from it, as Bernard said, would have been a really good idea. It turned out the people who left formed a group, I forget, it might have been a Yahoo group, but they formed a group for ex-Digital Focus employees. And it was very happy to discover that it was like a happy group, not a complaining.
Oh, okay, nice.
They were talking about the great days of Digital Focus, and
Okay.
and they started organizing like annual gatherings, like a fraternity almost. And
Because
those
I could
went on
celebrate
for about a
life.
decade. So you know, I think, you know, how people leave has a big impact. And, you know, in my region, there are a lot of people who know people who had worked for that company. Word gets around,
Yes.
and your reputation does have an impact. I think following up with people is another way of learning, and also just showing them that they're not just
A
you know,
number.
a resource that
Yes.
like that.
Okay, I think we're towards the end of the discussion. Before we go, I think if it's fine, I just, you know, David, you said that you have laid off or been part of this process a while. So maybe you can also give us what you think on, should there be a questionnaire or a measure to revise the impact of the layoff, or do you have something like that in place?
I didn't do that before, but I think it would be good to focus on those people that remain. I think this is important because for those people, they left the organization at that moment of time doing any. I mean, first of all, we need to make sure that we do the right thing, right? But asking them to fill in a questionnaire maybe for them will be something they really don't want to do it because of the institution.
As they're leaving.
Yeah, but for those people that remains, we need to help them to go through the transition and continues the engagement and open for feedback. I think having a questionnaire for those group of people possibly will be very helpful.
Yes. Thank you, David, and thank you to all the panelists. I think we really need to look into having another one of these discussions. There's a lot to talk about and a lot of ideas to run with. I'm going to hand over back to Mariana. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Mariana, you are on mute. Here we go.
Okay. Hello once again. We have some exciting news where all of you all will get a chance to connect with experts from all over the globe. We have an upcoming global virtual conference, the People Ops Pulse 2023, scheduled this year from October 10th to 12th, 9 a.m. to noon, New York time. So the conference will explore how organizations can ACE, that is foster business agility, adopt coaching as a practice, and elevate the people experience. So feel free to pre-register for the conference, and I will be sharing the link with you all soon. So hoping to meet you all for the conference. So now that we have come to an end to our panel discussion, I would like to thank our esteemed panelists, moderator, for this thought-provoking discussion. And I would also like to thank you all from the audience for joining us today. And I would like to appreciate your time, your participation, and I hope everybody found today's session very informative and engaging. So stay tuned for more. We'll be coming up with more sessions like this for you to learn and grow with us. So thank you.